Hello everybody, CW here. Okay, we got this smokeless muzzleloader out here. Let's check a few things. Let's look at some things. Let's measure some stuff. I got the Boroscope out. I got the mic out. The calipers out. We're going to pull out the breech plug. We're going to look at the breech plug, look inside the bore, get some measurements. We're going to find out how the bore is, how the bore looks. We're going to get a dimension on where the bullet sits, and we're going to talk about how some of these loads are going to work. So stand by. Let's get into it. Okay, this is with the rod inserted into the muzzle with the breech plug in place. You're looking at the end of the rifling where it goes into the chamber. So that's the lead. Right there is the lead, and then this is the chamber. And I think that might be the edge of the breech plug. Can't really tell for sure. What I'm going to do next is we're going to look at the end of the breech, at the end of the rod here, the end of the camera. So this is the end of the camera. So this right here was up against the breech plug. And then it wasn't quite in the center. So I'm going to say we're looking at maybe a heavy 1/8 of an inch from the end of the rifling to the beginning of the breech plug. And here is the breech plug. And here is a 4570 cartridge. So, as you can see, that's about the position the breech plug is. And that's about what we're seeing. Now, it appears to me that that's about the relationship, because the bullet, this end of the bullet is going to be into the rifling when it's chambered, but it's not going to be touching. The jump is going to be from the ogive where it reaches full diameter, which is back here by the tip of my fingernail. So all this being in the chamber, in the rifling, is fine. It isn't touching anything. If it was a 4570, I don't want to confuse anybody. We're just comparing it for length. We're just looking at what we have for powder capacity, powder charge that's going to remain in the chamber. So all this is threads. This is all going to be blocked. So we have from here, this surface here, which is where our camera, when it was in the muzzle, bumped up against. Okay, and then it measured about halfway up the glass. So about 3/16. So my guesstimate is it's going to be about there-ish. This is just sub-flush from the end of the barrel, because when the primer goes in, the primer sticks out a little bit because you have to have room to pop the primer off. The primer doesn't fit flush in there. So I'm thinking that that's pretty close to what we're looking at. Now, what we're going to do is we are going to, because what we want to limit, we want to make sure the bullet, when we push it down the barrel, doesn't drop off the rifling at all. We want the bullet to remain completely in the rifling. Completely. We don't even want the tail of this bullet hanging off. If it hangs off into the chamber area, when the powder ignites, the pressures build, it'll obturate the base of this bullet fatter than the bore, causing an obstruction, which is going to raise pressures and cause problems. So you want this bullet to remain completely in the rifling. The powder charge can be in the chamber, no problem at all. Powder charge can cup into the rifling, no problem at all. But we want to make sure this bullet, when we push it down the barrel, remains in the rifling 100%. Now, to give you a fudge factor, some of the forums you read say, you want it in there a good 100 thousandths, just to give you a fudge factor. And that's just an arbitrary number, but it makes sure that you're in there. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to push this bullet down the barrel. That's going to serve a couple things. H&Rs are known to have poor bores, inconsistent diameters. They're a sub-quality firearm. They just are not super high quality. Some of them are great. Some of them are really bad. That's why some shoot and some don't. So we're hoping that we get a good one. I'm going to push this down the barrel. Now I've resized this bullet down to 450. just because I want to make sure I have no problems pushing it down. I am going to lube it up as well, but it's powder coat as you can see, so it's pretty slick. But we want this to go right down the barrel without any problem. And we want to stop while it's still completely in the rifling. Ideally, you know, until, like I said, a 1/16 of an inch-ish from the base of this bullet to the end of the rifling. Be about perfect. As a maximum seating depth for this bullet. So we'll do that. Then we'll mark the ramrod so we know never ever to go more depth than this, but with this bullet. So we got to do it with a bullet that you're going to be shooting. This is, what is this, 265, I think, 260. I don't remember the number of this one, but it's just one I chose because it was handy and out. But this will serve the purpose to check the bore, to give us some dimensions we can measure off of, and see what we get. So let's do that. Stand by. Okay, so I just dropped the bullet down the barrel, and it dropped right down the barrel. Free. Dropped right down the barrel to here. So I just measured off the end of the barrel. I'm sorry you can't see everything. I'm kind of doing it with two hands here. So the end of the barrel right here. So I just marked this at the end of the barrel. This is how deep the bullet went to the tip of the bullet into the bore before it hit a constriction. Now I'm going to clean this barrel because there's a lot of oil in here. I saw with the Boroscope. So we're going to run some patches through, dry patches, to clean out the oil so that we can see if that's what's stopping the bullet. Because it's not hard. It's not a hard stop. It just stopped. And it could be just the oil. So I just pushed this in the bore and marked it. So we know that right there is where the tip of the bullet is. And then if we take the breech plug and lay it on here approximately in the position, we know we've got a tightness of the bore happening in the last 8 inches of the barrel. So your average charge, depending on your powder, of course, you know, there's all kinds of variables, but we're probably going to be shooting 4198 to try. There's a couple of powders, 4227, 4198 are recommended. So we'll probably try 4198. And it's a pretty bulky powder. It's a pretty bulky charge. It's around 50 grains-ish that you're shooting. So a heavy 4570 load, if you look it up in your books. But we're shooting a lighter bullet. We're only shooting up to 300 grains. So anyway, you know, a 50 grain charge is going to be probably 3/4 of a case full of powder or more. So that being the case, that powder charge is going to come up here probably in about that range. And then the bullet on top of that. So we're talking about maybe 1.5 inches of tight bore. Now let's get this cleaned of oil and see if it's not the oil that's stopping us. I just want to show you here. I don't know if you can see my hand, but the difficulty of pushing this bullet through is one finger. One finger, and I don't even think it's a pound of force. So it's nothing that's holding that. And it's so little, I probably could polish this out with JB bore paste. So let's just run a snake through here. I've got a 45 caliber snake. That'll take out the oil that's in here pretty quick and easy. Probably as easy as anything. Just pull this right through the barrel, because you've got all that is a mop to dry up, pull the oil out. All right, so let's try this again. Dry this bullet off, make sure there's anything on this bullet to cause it to have any kind of resistance going down the barrel. And let's just, I know you can't see me, but I'm dropping it down the barrel. Here we go. All right, it didn't drop down. So the oil that was in there, it's only about 3 inches down the barrel, but it's got no resistance to push it down. So let's just slide it down here with the rod and see if we got any resistance. All right, again, the same point. I'm going to stop and remove the rod and see where our constriction starts. Oh, look at there. This time it slid all the way down till we're just in front of, so again, we're the last 3 or 4 inches. So it was oils that were through here. So we're pretty consistent with our barrel. We're going to try a bigger bullet and see if our consistency remains. This again was a 450 sized bullet. And it pushes right through like nothing. It goes through like butter. So 450 is going to be too small. Let's size up to a 451 and run that through. Stand by. Okay, here's the same bullet. Sized 452. I didn't have the 451 handy. 452, so it went 2 thousandths bigger. Let's see how this goes. It's obviously going to have some resistance. But let's see what kind of resistance. 2 thousandths. Wow, it doesn't want to go in. Doesn't want to go in that barrel. I didn't put any kind of lube on it. So let's take this back out. Because all I did was push it in with thumb pressure. I'm just tapping it lightly. It comes right out. But I don't want to get in a situation where I'm too tight. So it looks like 452 is going to be on the tight side. So we want to try 451. That's definitely what we want to do. Now there's no engraving here. We didn't do that much. Let me zoom you in. All the way up to 15 power. There's no engraving. There's a little bit of a rifling ding right there. I'm looking at the same time you are. See, I don't see. Right there's a line from rifling. So it's not grabbing by much. There's one. 0.5 thousandths maybe. So we're going to try 451. Let me get that sizer out and set up. Okay, here's what we've got. So this is the first one we did. This was sized 450, and it's actually coming up on this 451, 450 and a half to 451 is what this one's coming up at. This was sized 450. This one here is the one we just sized in that Lyman push-through die, 451, and it's coming up 451 and a half, almost 452. Just shy of 452. 451 and a half. And this one was sized 452. And this one is coming up closer to 453, 454. Okay, this is too big to easily go down the barrel. This drops down the barrel a little bit and then pushes through with finger pressure. So this, I think, is going to be our size, which is 452. We're just going to call it 452 because we go, it's ever so slightly less. And it does get tight just before the end of the rifling. So the last 2 inches of barrel where we get tight. Kind of expected it. That's a thing with H&Rs. So where do we go from here? Let's make sure that barrel's good and clean. And there's no obstructions in there that are not the barrel itself causing that obstruction. Okay, off camera, I just weighed a charge of 45 grains of 4198 powder. I chose to use these 270 grain RCBS bullets as a starting bullet. It's a really nice bullet. I like it a lot. It's what was used to make the 308 that I really like in the 454 that I envisioned using here. But I don't want to use a hollow point. I want to stay with a soft point. And I want to cast them up soft. So I'm going to take these. These are harder cast, but it doesn't matter. Ran them through the 451 sizer. So they're going to be in 451.5 or so. Seated one down the barrel on top of the powder. Remove the breech plug. Now we're going to measure and we're going to look up inside. So at first, let's leave the angled head on it so we can see the sides of the chamber. And let me start it in there, and then let me move this over here and zoom you in. See if I can make this work without going too nutso here. I think this is about the center of your screen, but I'm not sure. I'll get the glare. I'll get rid of the glare if I'm able to. Okay, now it's a little bit too much zoom. So we'll zoom out a little bit. Now you're looking at the threading that was done. We're just sticking it in the barrel. So here we go. We're just going in. These are the threads that were cut to accept my breech plug. By the way, they're very nice, very tight. No wobble whatsoever. Very, very good quality cut. And there's the end of the threading and the end of the chamber. There's the lead. And there's the rifling. Okay, so we are definitely into the rifling, and now we're stopped. Bang, bang, bang. We're stopped at the bottom of the bullet. So we have a good, oh boy, a good half, 3/4 of an inch, maybe more of rifling that bullet's in. So we have no worries with 45 grains. More than likely, 40, 42 is going to be the bottom, the lowest. But let's remove this head so that we can just use the forward-facing camera. So now the camera is going to be just facing forward. Let's put it back in. We'll look at the base of the bullet. All right, let me get everything out of the way. So there we go. You can see the base of the bullet in there. There's my rifling. I'm sorry, my threading. There's the end of the chamber. And there's the rifling. And you can see a little bit of unburned powder. Well, unburned, of course, we didn't shoot anything. But there's a little bit of powder, and there's the base of my bullet. See if I can go all the way around. It doesn't show the top very well. I don't know why. There we go. It looks good. We are fully seated in the rifling with at least, well, there you go. Okay, we're back in the chamber. So it's a good, I'm going to say it's even an inch, but it's a shy inch. Right up to the base of the bullet. So that load is going to be fine. It's probably going to be a light load. I may even go, 50 grains like they say. Don't know. We'll see what the gun likes and what reaches me to velocity that I'm looking for. Like, most people do this, and they're looking to achieve big, huge velocity numbers so they can shoot at long range. That's not my intent. My intent was to be able to shoot more than 2 or 3 shots without having to clean the gun like you do with a black powder and black powder substitutes, and not to have that big flume of white smoke that obscures your target so you don't even know how your hit was, where your hit was, which direction your game ran, if it runs. Those are all huge negatives for black powder, and there's something I was hoping to eliminate. And then the last one was, you know, to be able to use my cast bullets. Also, with Smokeless, you're not required to have all these lubed. This powder coating is enough lube to not cause any leading. So I can run this bullet just like this with no sticky lubes on it. I can carry a pocket full of these without any worry of anything sticking to them because no lube is required. All I need is a few vials of powder, pre-measured, once I arrive at my charge. And I can go and hunt, load, shoot pretty much as many times as I want without worrying about, you know, having to take a shot after a dirty bore and having it maybe hard to load. Now, that's never happened, so that's a minor concern. I've never had to take more than 2 shots. And even then, it's been when there's multiple deer and I've got a couple of permits. So, generally speaking, you know, you shoot and you always reload just in case, but it's almost never required or needed. So, all right, let's measure a few more things. Let's look at a couple more. I'm doing this in stages, so I don't know where this is going to pop up next. So what we've done is I marked the rod with the lowest possible charge, meaning the lowest or the deepest I can seat a bullet. Deepest I can seat this bullet. Again, we said because of the length of this bullet. If I get to that silver, that's as deep as I want to seat the bullet. 45 grain load is this gold line. Now, something else. You do not need to compress the powder anymore like you do with the black powder. It's very critical that you seat the bullet hard on top of the powder. You don't want any airspace. I don't believe that's the case anymore with Smokeless. I want to clarify that so I'm 100%. But when you're loading your cases, compressed is okay, but more often than not, you've got an airspace and it's fine. So I don't see why it wouldn't be fine here. I want to clarify that with a little more reading, but that's my understanding thus far. All right, let me get some clear up here, put this all back together, and see where we stand. Stand by. All right, everybody. That's it for this video. Next step, we're ready for the range. I just cleaned everything out, put everything back together, and I snapped a primer. Wanted to see how nice and centered that was. I remember the smith telling me that it wasn't overly centered on his test fire. He used it on his receiver. I don't know why he had mine, but he used it on his. So I'm not surprised that it wasn't centered. This one here was fit by me to be correct. And as you can see, although it's not perfect, it's pretty darn close to perfectly centered. Not that it really matters at all. As long as it strikes the center silver portion, it's going to go off. And it's a good deep dent, so everything's good. All right, everybody. Look for this on the range next. God bless. CW out.